What's up, guys? This is the CJ Murray Podcast, an exploration of music philosophy from a Christian perspective. These are stories and insights to encourage and challenge our views of music, God, and who we are. Thanks for listening, and now, today's conversation. Josiah, it's so good to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
And so, right before we hit record, and we were talking about what we were going to talk about, I said, I don't think I've ever heard your story from the beginning.
Yeah.
So, like, where we got here. So, do you want to walk through that?
Yeah, 10 out of 10. So, as a musician, I suppose I kind of had a roundabout way of getting to college and studying music. I probably started playing piano sometime around middle school. My oldest sister taught several of us siblings how to play, and that was my first introduction to music, consistently practicing, having that as a steady part of my life. And I held that all the way through middle school, high school. I was able to participate a lot in my church. I was a pianist there and an organist.
You play organ?
I do play organ. Not exceptionally well.
Okay.
When our organist at my church left, they asked if I was willing to just play it to the best of my knowledge, and I was happy to.
So you just kind of learn from experience.
Exactly. So I played it. I play it like a piano. Then there's some things that I know technically that are different, and so I had to adjust to that. But I know enough to make some noise.
Okay, so like, just because I don't think I've really had this conversation yet, this is a whole aside.
Yeah.
What's like the biggest differences between organ and piano?
Well, I think
there's no sustain, right?
Yeah, the no sustain is probably the biggest adjustment that I had to make because, you put your hands down on the keys, and the moment you lift, the sound stops. And so when you're playing hymns, you kind of have to keep the weight more consistent in your fingers as you move between notes, because if you lift, and that sound stops. So you kind of let the weight of your hands rest on the keys as you move between chords. At least that's how I did it while I was adjusting to it. That was the biggest change. And then obviously you have a multitude of settings and stops that are all in there. I was blessed to have a gentleman that came and kind of explained what the presets the organ were at my home church. So we basically just put all the presets and made it so that basically I just had to press a couple buttons and I didn't have to do much else than that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So, so you played piano and some organ for your church.
Yes.
And then...
Yeah. So, and I still hadn't really done any consistent singing, but it was something that definitely started to become a primary interest in high school. I think I went to a few different plays. The most prominent would have been Finding Neverland. There was a traveling Broadway group that came and visited in Arizona. Myself and my sisters went to visit, and I was just blown away by the expressiveness and the music and the movement on the stage. Everything about it it captured my attention. And that really kind of ignited an interest in me for singing. But I had no real background. I didn't necessarily consider myself naturally talented in that area either. And around the same time, I was also developing interest in a skill set in a more medical sense.
Oh, really?
So I kind of had these interests moving in parallel, and when graduation rolled around, like the big question was, what are you going to do next? And I was like, I'd really like to do music. I feel like that is something I really enjoy and have a keen interest for. But I also had this interest in the medical field as well. And eventually, through conversation with my parents and friends, we decided we're going to go the medical route. So I started looking into schools offering nursing degrees, and I visited a college in state. I'm from Arizona, so I visited a school there to see their program, ask questions, and then I forget how I heard about Pensacola Christian College. I think that a friend I was working with at Chick-fil-A at the time brought it up. I think he may have been intending to go, and he mentioned offhandedly, "Oh, I heard you were interested in nursing. Well, I think they have a really good nursing program." So I decided, okay, I'll take a look at it. And PCC does offer a pretty substantial program. And I was interested in the idea of moving out of state. And so after a lot of prayer, decided I'm going to Pensacola Christian College for nursing. And so that's what I did. And it was great. But the desire for music never really went away. So I'm in my first semester, and I was able to sign up for a group known as Spirit Singers.
Right.
And that small ensemble group, that was my introduction to music at PCC. And really my introduction to choir. As we know it, I had done some choir at my home church, but, it was specific to church. And this was the first time I was in a group that performed for live events outside of church, did concerts, such. And really, it just captured my heart, and I really enjoyed it fully. The faculty member that is the teacher, or was the teacher for that group, was very inspirational, and I really appreciated how he led the group. And so I kind of felt the Lord tugging on my heart, reminding me, like, hey, you had this desire and this sense for music, and it's gonna go somewhere. So by the time I got to the end of that first semester, I knew that the Lord was wanting me to move into the music program and to leave nursing behind. And that is what ended up happening. In December, I switched my major over to music. And then in January or February, when the new semester started, I was in the music program.
So before we move on from that, so
Yeah.
you did one semester of nursing,
Yeah.
switched to music. What was that transition like to go from, well, you were probably taking a lot of prereqs, right?
Yeah,
so
I was.
So you really weren't getting into much of the medical stuff yet.
Yeah, that's correct. In that first semester, I had prereqs like math, history, English, so I got those out of the way real quick.
Yeah.
And I had two classes that were specific to the nursing program. One was a chemistry class and the other was biology. And it worked out that, those classes counted towards my science electives. So I essentially lost no time. The only exception was I was going to be in an off semester for theory. And another requirement for the program was having voice lessons all, what would it be, like all 12 semesters or something like that you're here. So I would be short one semester.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it was a really seamless transition. I think that the biggest thing was that I had never had a voice lesson before, and I was diving into a vocal performance degree with very little knowledge of the voice and how to sing. And so that was a large adjustment.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't hear a whole lot of stories of, you hear a lot of stories of people going from like music to another major, but not so much the other way around. So God was tugging on your heart. What's like, you have the passion to learn to sing. When you were taking singing lessons, what did it look like as you fed that desire or passion, like from, the beginning of that to end of college or after or masters, like what did that journey look like?
Yeah, it was very rocky, but
Really?
the Lord was obviously so good through all of it, because I had a lot of insecurity to overcome, and insecurity has a huge effect on musicians, on singers. I have, or I have to work with really intense stage fright. I do
Really?
not like being the center of attention. And so that was especially true then. And then I had all of these presuppositions or, ideas in my mind of what learning to sing would be like or what my sound was going to be, and breaking away from the image that I had in my mind to what reality was a huge adjustment, because one of the biggest things that we talk about when we're studying the voice and you're new is trying to find that person's voice, like what is their real voice, because we come into a lesson with all types of influences and ideas.
Yeah.
And so for me going into a classical studio, I thought I need to sing, I have to pull everything back, and it needs to be like this big ominous sound, and that's not the reality. The reality is, we're actually looking for the most free, the most you voice that you can produce. So that was a big adjustment, was getting past all of those presuppositions that I had in my mind about what it needed to look like. And I mean, that is something that singers deal with all the time.
It's almost like you have to shave off all the bad technique you've built up or work on the technique that needs to be there, but it's all for the sole purpose, as you were saying, to relax and just let your voice be your voice.
Absolutely.
Because I took vocal lessons for a short period, but one of the things that was also talked about is like, so what music do you listen to? Like what singers do you like? And sometimes, we listen to a singer and think, oh, I want to sound like that, but that's just not, like, stylistically you might be able to mimic some of that, but it's your voice may not be naturally that low or maybe not even naturally that big. Like some people's voices are just lighter and up here, and it's just and there's some guys that just naturally have this low
Absolutely rumble. I know, I'm jealous of that. I'm a tenor through and through, so low notes, they're a world that I don't get to participate in. And I have students when they rumble, it's such an excellent sound, and I love it so much.
Okay, quick philosophical tangent on that. No, it's kind of like, when you're learning to sing, and just as you said, like, you're going for the voice that's you. Like, what's your voice?
Yeah.
And then when you get to the end of the journey, you realize, well, my voice only goes so low. There's things you can do to relax, and maybe like your range gets lower. Like, I think it's easier to break through the higher realm after a lot of practice and time, because like higher, like if you just relax and your range goes up, but like I feel like there's more of a cap on the low. I think there's a beauty of knowing your place in a choir.
Certainly,
like knowing your place, but then also more than that, to parallel the Christian life or church, it's like when you relax and just accept, okay, this is the role God's given to me.
Yeah.
Oh, like this is my calling. Like, I mean, even on a broader scale, like, oh, music is my lane, and I love the lane and I'm going to grow in it. And like, I'm not gifted in these areas. And I don't know, for me, I felt like growing up, it was hammered into me that the more well-rounded you are, the better. And there's a lot of merit to that. But also, like, if you want to get really good at a craft, it's just impossible to be well-rounded. It's impossible to be as good as other things as you are going to be your craft. Like, this is my thing. And I think there's such a beauty in just being grateful, like, hey, I'm going to focus on this. And be grateful for how good people are at other things, but this is,
Yeah.
what I'm going for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's definitely a part of the journey of studying voice is slowly learning where you fit, where your voice fits in the voice types. Sometimes we try not to make too big of a deal of it because we do have singers that are like, I'm going to be a bass. Like, no matter what, I'm going to be a bass. But maybe their voice is more baritone or more tenor. I know for me, undergrad, I was like, I'm baritone. I am not going to be, high notes aren't my thing. Low notes aren't my thing either. I'm happy and content to stay in the nice, comfy middle. And my teacher was so patient with me all the time because I was stubborn, and he did push me. By the time I got to the end of undergrad, I think I was slowly starting to accept that, the my way and the highway mentality wasn't going to work, and that my voice wanted to go further. And that was a huge reason why I decided to stay for grad school, was because sure, I had spent 4 years. I was able to develop a reliable foundational technique in my approach to voice, but my voice wasn't done exploring yet and needed a little bit more time. And so I decided to stay for grad school, and my teacher, I think even from the very first lesson, was like, Josiah, I know that you think you're a baritone, but there's a tenor in there. They could just hear it. My teacher could hear it in my voice that my voice wanted to go higher. And he was very patient. He wasn't going to, push me to do something that would cause pain, discomfort for my voice.
Right.
But he heard potential that I wasn't yet willing to hear. But we know that the end result was now I sing tenor. The recital I performed for my graduate studies was a tenor recital, and it definitely helped me to understand better when you're willing to explore your voice, how much more it's capable of producing.
So did that look like, just gradually you would choose a musical selection that went one note higher than what you were used to, and just kind of you wrangled with that, and then after that you just explored a little higher?
It was a myriad of things. So repertoire does definitely have a part in that, because when you are singing as a tenor, getting used to the tessitura of tenor music is definitely an adjustment, because all of a sudden you're not really living in the middle of your voice anymore, where that's where your notes are easiest to produce. But now I'm actually spending more time close to, above, or around my passaggio, or the passage in my voice where it breaks.
Right.
And that takes a lot of energy. It requires a lot of energy in your breath and in your body. It takes a lot of focus in the beginning, like a conscious decision that you're going to have energy every time that you sing something, so that way you're not giving yourself the option to be lazy or to find a workaround or something of that sort. So repertoire definitely has a big part in it. And then I'd say another big thing was how I practiced. My practice needed to change. I needed to find a way to challenge my voice in my practice, but not just, okay, I'm going to sing through this song a few times, and, if things go wrong, then maybe I'll stop and work at that one thing, but then I'm just going to go back to singing it again, and, eventually it'll work itself out on its own. But it really doesn't work that way.
You have to find the problem.
Yeah, it's not a mentality of if you just sing the notes, it'll just sing itself. It'll come around. It's being way more nitty gritty. Vowels, consonants, all of these things have an effect on how I might express a word, and particularly where that note might be in the music might change how I choose to approach it. And so that requires that sometimes you go, motif by motif or line by line, and you listen carefully as you produce the sound to figure out, okay, well, am I able to stay open in this phrase? And if I'm not, why? Is it because of the ooh vowel that I'm singing? Am I producing that vowel in a way that's not open? And if it's not open, is it because of my breath? Is it, there's so many little things that go into that kind of work.
Your mind goes deeper into the problems, and
Yes.
you know better how to diagnose, like, oh, this is specifically why this is not working the way that I want it to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it was a change in my practice that involved being willing to go deeper and be meticulous and really pay attention to what I was doing.
Right.
So that would be another thing that would be a part of that process.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And one thing that I remember, you said something that made me think of this. You said that, being lazy isn't an option when you step up to it. And I remember just learning the concept of like, learning to sing isn't too far off from like being an athlete because of the amount of intention you have to put into energy, in the lower breath realm.
Yeah.
And it's very conscious.
Absolutely.
And, you have to not be afraid to end up tired by the end of it.
Yeah.
Like it takes focus, it takes breath control, and you got to be locked in.
Yeah, absolutely. That is incredibly important. In fact, there was a point in my graduate studies when we were specifically working on crossing my passage and figuring out like how is a tenor going to do this? How are they going to approach it? And my teacher said, it's about batting average. And being consistent. We lock on to how to do it correctly, and then we are pursuing doing it correctly again and again and again. But it's that consistency. It's, creating a batting average, trying to be at the top of that average as often as possible. But obviously sometimes you won't be. But what's really important is that there's consistency. If there is no consistency, then you're always going to be you're always going to be just a little bit behind. And it was super important for that specific technique that we were learning. But I would say that applies to really anything that you're doing in music. Is you have to be consistent in your approach. So that way you have you can sense freedom within that consistency to be musical.
And something about what you said about batting average is it's a batting average keeps track of losses. You're looking for those too, because I think that it's easier to only notice the wins. Like, oh yeah, that was a good thing. Like, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Like the pat on our own back or from other people is that boost, but also it's being really honest with the loss.
Yeah.
Just like you said, like, oh, why is this not fill in the blank? Why is this not turning out the way I want it to? Okay, and more than that, and this is always what's gotten me is like singing's about relaxing, and you're combining a lot of things, but it's relaxing. So when you're hard on yourself, that's not conducive to relaxing, and it's not. So like that's what's just so fascinating to me about learning music as a whole is one tie between like almost all the instruments. The singing more than anything is just the idea of relaxing combined with you got to be critical, think critically. And man, it's just such a hard line to ride. And I think we were talking about this one time I was recording you. I think we had this conversation about like, oh man, when you get behind the mic, it's getting behind the mic to record is so different than singing live.
It is.
Because like live, your only focus is, okay, I put in the work, I put in the practice, I'm going to sing it passionately, and one shot, boom, done. When you're recording and you have the option, it's like, okay, like this has to, and like we can get this again, and like and like with people, tone can change too.
Absolutely.
There's just something about being behind a mic. I'm really curious your thoughts about this. Like, what's the difference between relaxing singing behind a mic or behind singing live in the studio? Like, I'm sorry, you didn't have a mic live. Being in the studio versus live.
Yeah. I mean, in the studio, I feel a lot less pressure because I know that it's a collaborative, creative space that allows for failure. Like, obviously, we're pursuing a clean product at the end, but it still provides like the option for, oh, I didn't like that take, can we do it again? That kind of idea. Live, it's one time. It's one time. So it's there's something about live that has kind of an electric energy to it because
there's adrenaline.
Exactly. And you know that it's only once. And yes, you feel the pressure to make it count. And that's, where I've had to work on my stage fright and making sure that I have a good mindset with the stage. But I would say the biggest thing is just that you have the pressure and the knowledge that I'm going to do this once and I've had all this time to prep. Now I have to relax and think, okay, I don't know how many times I've been sitting waiting to move to stage to sing for a performance, and I've had to have a conversation with the Lord and just say, Lord, you know that I've practiced. You know that I've spent hours preparing for this moment. It's not my moment at the end of the day. It's yours. Yeah. So, please help me to remember the things that I have pursued so that I can just enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And so having that kind of internal conversation has definitely helped a lot because the goal that we want to have when we go out to stage for that live performance is the freedom to have fun, the freedom to be musical. Yeah. If you're locked up because of fear or adrenaline or whatever it might be, that freedom isn't going to be there.
Yeah.
So there's a large amount of trust that goes into it, of trusting the effort that's been invested into the performance, and then taking your hands off the steering wheel and saying, okay, I'm just gonna go for it, be all in. So I would say that's what it's like to be live. And then in the studio, just because there's not as much pressure, I think that being creative and the joy of that process may come a little bit easier for some. I know for me, it comes a little bit easier because, we just have a great time in the studio.
You get to ask what if.
Yeah.
And if it goes south or sideways, just delete it,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. And there definitely is a difference in approach in terms of tone. I know that we have had this conversation before. I know for myself, I studied as a classical singer, so my technique is founded in a bel canto style of singing, and that style is primarily used in settings where microphones aren't present. And so a lot of our sound is, freedom in resonance, filling a space. And when you get into a studio and maybe they're asking for, maybe not so robust of a tone, the temptation or the habit to oversing is always there. Because technically speaking, I'm always thinking, full tone, try to give everything I have. But in the studio, you can manipulate sound in a healthy way.
Yeah. I can,
in so many different
we
ways.
can always push your volume
right
on our own end.
exactly yeah exactly. Like maybe I want to come in close and I want to make it a really personal moment,
Yeah.
so I bring my microphone really close. Or maybe I want to my sound to just be lighter, and so I don't include as much depth in the sound as I might want. Those are all things that you have in a studio setting that you might not have in a live performance.
I think as far as being good at any craft, there's merit in, like, you're better off to have the ability to fill a robust space well.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to experiment and like restrain more and like go in for those small moments, like at that point, I would imagine it'd be easier to do that than be mostly really good at singing in a way that it's kind of like smaller and up front. And then someone's like, hey, like, can you sing way louder? Can you fill more of a space? Like, it'd be harder to go that direction.
Sure.
Than the vice versa, I would think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think that an important part of what you're saying is that the classical approach to singing, I mean, it is a practiced, a proven approach to the voice that offers singers longevity in their voice. There are opera singers who are singing well into their 80s and 90s with, obviously age is there, but their voice has a lot of health to it. But then we also have singers that have chosen other styles of singing whose voices are already showing signs of age, but maybe they're only in their 30s or 40s. So I think that the classical approach is definitely a very important foundation to a singer, something to rely on for freedom and openness. And then as you venture into other styles, you try to keep as much as you can from that practice, that bel canto, free, beautiful singing. You try to hold on to that and implement it as much as you can in other styles.
So, like, primarily breath control, relaxation, of course. Like, those are the first thing that comes to my mind and the things to keep. Like, the further you venture out, what are some things other than breath control and relaxation that like you could keep?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So where I'm at currently, I'm always developing my music philosophy, and I'm always open to hearing other perspectives of the approach. I think I read this in a book. I'm forgetting the author's first name, but Bauer is the last name. And her book is a three-step kinesthetic process to beautiful singing. It's a really long title. But what was really important about that study was her 3 points, which were open body, open throat, forward articulation. So let's start with open body. Open body means openness in your breath, and openness all here. And there's so many things that go into an open body. Posture is a big one. Like, how do you stand? How do you sit? What are you actually trying to accomplish with good posture? Good posture, if you are in that stance, you should feel a lot of freedom here. But you're also transferring the entire weight of your body someplace, right? Because my head has weight, my shoulders, my arms, all of this has weight to it, and it's got to go somewhere. It can't, it's always going down, right? Because of gravity.
Yeah.
So figuring out where that weight is going and how I'm distributing it. So posture is a big part of that. Breath would be another, because breath is heavily affected by posture. Maybe if I'm bringing my head too far forward when I'm singing, I'm transferring the weight of my head and neck off of my spine, and now it's starting to come down onto my chest, which is going to cause my ribs to collapse in some way. My shoulders might roll forward as well. So now, because I'm out of alignment, I'm not going to be able to take as full a breath as I could because I've collapsed. But it all started with how I was standing, you know? So open body would be a big thing. I think that it is possible to have an open body in many different styles of singing, not just opera or bel canto. Another one is open throat. And open throat is a more difficult one probably to maintain throughout styles. But having an open throat, so I mean, we can feel squeeze when we produce sound, right?
Yeah.
Like I might be able to produce a tone that's open, but I could also
Like squeeze it out.
where I'm allowing pressure to be placed upon my throat and it's closing. So having an open throat is going to reduce a lot of the pain and pressure that might be on the voice otherwise.
Right. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
So like if you have singers that have more of a breathy style.
Yeah.
Like what goes into that as far as like open throat or forwardness? I'm curious.
So it would probably affect forwardness a little bit more because of the approach. So when we take a breath in, we breathe in, and then as we breathe out, we let all of that air escape. But when we sing, we breathe in, and then that air is going to vibrate through the vocal folds. So the vocal folds kind of sit like this in our throat side by side.
Right.
And if we are going to allow some air through, the vocal folds might not come together. They might not induct as closely as they would if we brought them all the way together. So there's a little bit of space between them.
Sure.
With more air coming through. And so that's what's happening in the voice box. But then also when we tend to sing with a breathier tone, we draw the sound a little bit further back. And that's just something that we do because our ear thinks that's what we're supposed to do.
Sure.
So I might kind of pull my voice back and now I'm letting more air through. So that tends to happen with breathier singing. And then you also just run out of air faster because you're letting more air through. When I'm singing without air coming through, there should be a very small amount of air escaping. In fact, if you were to put like a candle in front of my mouth while I sing, the candle shouldn't go out. Like that's how little air is actually coming through.
I've never heard that as litmus before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there shouldn't be a lot of air passing through. Now, we do sometimes ask for a breathier style. And so it has a time and a place. But it does come with certain contingencies, like you might run out of breath faster. So maybe think shorter phrases rather than longer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did I feel like I interrupted your thought of the 3 kinesthetic steps. So you have open body, open throat, and forward
articulation.
Forward articulation.
So this is the idea that, yes, we want diction to be done with the tip of the tongue and the teeth.
Yeah.
But we want everything to be thought of as forward. Because anytime that we think, anytime that we start to kind of think inside, or like we're doing something, like we're having to do singing, more or less. There's a control aspect to that. And I mean, I would imagine a lot of us would be control freaks about how we would want to present our voice and our ability.
Sure.
But that's not freedom. So having that ability to just articulate everything out, everything moving forward, everything out of the body. That's kind of what I have associated with that idea, that it's we're not trying to control what we're doing. We're just trying to express. It all goes back to really the idea of like, what are we even doing with music? Well, it's about expressing an idea, a feeling, an emotion, whatever it might be. And so it goes all the way back to the expression what are we trying to express? Or am I doing that effectively? Because it's not about us. It's about, what we're trying to convey.
I've always been fascinated just with how much effort and work goes into effective expression. Because I think that there's a lot of people that want to convey a lot of things, but to really do it justice, to really, like, when you hear a voice that's very trained or a voice that's like homegrown. I don't know, like it seems like there's a lot of good singers out there, even self-taught, but when the technique isn't conducive to what's gonna like last, it could even be like good, like, oh, good job right now, but like over the long run,
right,
it's hurting them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like to think about it. I got this idea from another vocal coach. I think her name's Tara Simon. But she talks about the voice as like we have an amount of vocal dollars. Like we have like a vocal currency. We don't know what we don't know how big the savings account is, so to speak. We can't know. But as singers, we're striving to find ways to budget well. And some things that we do with our voice might cost more. They might require more vocal dollars, so to speak. And so our pursuit is to understand, okay, how much is this going to cost? How can I budget it a little bit better? What am I doing right now that's, costing more when it shouldn't? So sometimes I like to think about it that way when I am thinking about a technique.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, what am I doing to help the budget? Do I have an open body when I do this? Do I have an open throat when I do this? Am I able to be expressive and articulate everything out? Yeah. If one of those is suffering, okay, is it actually physically poor for me to do it this way?
Sure.
Because if it is, then it's not worth that much vocal currency. Yeah. So I sometimes use that analogy, a metaphor in my mind.
I feel like maybe a more clear cut or straight line of an example for that might be you have a savings account for, the health of your hearing. And it's just every day, how loud am I listening to music?
Sure.
Because like if you're listening loud every day, fast forward 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. I actually feel, man, just the story that popped into my mind, it's actually kind of tragic, but my dad was hunting with my grandpa like decades ago, and he didn't bring ear protection. And at one point, like, I think it was my grandpa that took a shot and my dad's ear was like really close.
Wow.
Hearing problems the rest of his life, just a constant ringing. And it's just, it's something where like, whenever anything happens hearing, I panic. I'm like, how am I doing? Oh no, like this is my career, and an example, this is an aside, but Andrew Huang is an example of a musician, producer, and engineer, but he midway through college woke up one day with half of his hearing gone. He just woke up and the doctors didn't have answers either. It was, and so like of anyone that had an excuse to tap out of music, it was him.
Right.
But he kept on going and figured out ways to compensate. But what you're saying is you don't want to have to adapt later on of like, oh, half my voice is gone. How do I figure it out? One example of a guy that I wonder about, Dan from the band Bastille, his voice is very breathy, and in a way forced. And then when you look at the music videos, his neck is really forward. Now, like, I'm torn because like I hear his voice in a song, so I'm like, man, that's such a cool voice. Like, oh, that's so cool.
Absolutely.
But it's like, okay, it's cool. But after being in the band for like 15 plus years, okay, you can kind of hear that I think the style's wearing on him.
Yeah.
So like, I think as a young person, that I would still consider myself young. Sometimes it's hard to like hear a voice that's cool.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, like that's really neat. But then when you really break down, like kind of, cool is a little different than healthy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I 100% agree. It's tough. There's definitely voices that I've heard that I was like, I would love to be able to replicate, that sound. Scott Hoying from Pentatonics was a singer I listened to a lot.
Is he the blonde hair or the black hair guy?
He's the blonde haired.
Okay, yeah.
And I love a lot of the things that he does. He does, and sometimes it's difficult because you get into the world of right and wrong.
Yeah.
And with music, it's kind of like hard to like point a finger and say like you're doing this wrong, even when it like to our ear might sound really neat.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I kind of try to separate myself from that specific litmus of right and wrong, and view it more along the lines of he's a musician who understands his voice. All of them clearly have a really keen, probably comprehensive understanding of how the voice works, because they're professionals in that field. They sing a cappella music, which is hard to do. So I take all of those things into account, and then I notice things, choices that they make, and whatever the outcome might be, I might just say, you know what, I think for me personally, I wouldn't do that because I don't think I can do it healthy right now. So it's more about me just acknowledging what my position might be rather than necessarily casting judgment on what they're doing and what they might be sacrificing to produce that sound. Sure. If that makes sense.
The other thing too is like I find that regardless of what style someone's singing in, I think where the rubber really meets the road is regardless of your view of the voice. I think if you get the right song with the right instrumentation that just fits, like it still hits you emotionally.
Yeah.
Because like I've heard classical songs where, even like you could have like a mainstream Hollywood movie that just knew, in this scene in like the background, it needs this. I mean, I don't know, take Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
Or even the choir in Star Wars. Like there's still so many really powerful things that can be conveyed, and even a lot of songs in church, like there's, I can't believe my brain can remember it this far back, but I remember Paul New saying, he needs to be on this podcast too. But he sang a song called Sound the Horn.
Okay.
And it had this very epic,
ethereal
vibe of like, hey, we're Christians, and there's this mission that has a call to it, and the way that his bombastic voice conveyed it, like, hits.
Absolutely.
And I hear that, and what goes through my mind is, a pop voice wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
Like a pop voice wasn't going to convey that.
Yeah.
Could a pop voice have taken a song with different instrumentation and maybe a different approach to the message and still conveyed something similar that got me feeling similar? Sure, yes. But in that moment, just that rumble in my chest that I had, like that was fitting to that song and that voice.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, it's easy, as you said, I think, to look at some voices and think, oh man, it would be really cool. And it's like, but that voice just isn't going to accomplish maybe what your voice is going to accomplish. There's something that when you do the road right, there's still plenty of great avenues
Yeah.
that can be gone down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. It's been a while since I've listened to pentatonics, but they do some crazy stuff.
They do. Yes.
They do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And what sometimes I struggle to know sometimes, coming from the studio realm, and this isn't just pentatonics, this is a lot of a cappella groups, is I really wonder, like, the production that goes into it. Yeah, I mean, like, and especially on Instagram or, whatever, like, there's voice memo, a cappella, live things where they know what they're doing, they have a great sound, they're well practiced. But when I hear a studio recording, I'm like, how many times did they have to record that? Like, how, like how much pitch correction am I really getting? Or like, I mean, for example, I think that one of the easiest voices to go ham on pitch correction is the bass. Because the bass is the rock solid foundation. I think in a lot of the middle notes and the melody, you can play around laxly, but when you get the foundation of the bass that's setting the tone for anybody, it's really easy to just really flatten out that pitch. And so I wonder about stuff like that as an engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think a lot of groups like pentatonics. Another one that comes to mind is Voctave. They travel with engineers.
Sure.
I was actually at a concert.
Oh, they travel with engineers.
Yeah, I know for Voctave for sure, because I was at a concert. I think it would have been either this past November or December or something like that.
Okay.
And they have their sound engineer up in the back doing live mixing for them, which is phenomenal. They made sure to give him a little bit of a spotlight, which was really excellent. I thought that was great. But I would imagine for singers, I don't know exactly how much pitch correction would go into it. Whenever I'm singing live a cappella, there's the few things that can help with pitch.
Sure.
One of it is so much energy. Like, you have to have so much energy.
You can't let the pitch drift down.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not even just about being on pitch. It's about being, like, in the center of the tone. Like, there can be a few cents either way that makes the sound off. But then it's not, maybe everybody's in tune, but maybe they are producing the vowels differently. Maybe someone is saying, like, maybe the vowels ah, but someone is singing ah, or someone's saying oh. All of these different ways of producing the vowel can cause things to sound flat or out of tune or just something, it doesn't ring.
Yeah.
So lining up all of those vowels so that way the group is, in agreement. We're all saying the vowel the same way. And then another one would be how they're choosing to articulate the words. I mean, part of that goes into the expression of the words as well. But, if they're, whatever it might be that they're singing, is it in line with maybe the mood of that phrase or that portion of the song? If you're singing a song and it's joyful, there's going to be a little bit of a brightness to the sound, or you would want there to be a little bit of brightness to the sound. And maybe the way you choose to articulate things is just really crisp.
Right.
When you don't have that, then it's almost like the way you're articulating the song is not in agreement with the music. So all of those things would maybe be packed into what goes into keeping a song unified and in tune in an a cappella setting.
Man. And I suppose that's the benefit of classical training is everyone's ideally practiced a certain way to away.
There it goes.
Everyone's practiced a certain way of doing vowels.
Yeah.
So that if someone points out the distinction between like there's they know, okay,
Yeah.
this is where it needs to be placed. It's cohesive.
Yeah.
A recent example, this is an older song.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to this, I think 2 days ago. This was throwback. In fact, when I was in choir in high school,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 12 years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
our choir teacher showed us a song called Gravedigger, by an a cappella group.
Okay.
And I was going through the archives of my blog where I reposted the song. And yeah, it's a classically trained group of guys. And the song is essentially just the moral of the song is, regardless of how your life is lived, you're going to end up in a grave.
Mm-hmm.
Like, regardless of like this kid had these dreams and these ambitions,
Yeah.
he's in the grave. Like, oh, and this guy lived to 90 and this person lived to 30, and they're both in the grave. And it's like, it's same for everybody. But like the way they conveyed it was just so powerful. And it was an a cappella song. That's why I'm thinking of this.
Yeah.
But also they knew it so well that like when each soloist took the spotlight, there was just this respect of all the guys, like they were now singing it at the guy. Like they, like the main guy took the spotlight on, this is the emotion I'm going for.
Yeah.
And you can just tell that all the guys are like right there supporting with the bass, supporting with the harmony, and just
Yeah.
it was throwback for me to be like, man, that's like when as someone that feels out all like a lot of genres of music and like looks at all kinds of performances, I think it's easier to get carried away from the classical type of concerts. Like when I was younger, my parents took me to more, classical type settings, and my younger brother was in the Minnesota youth symphony, and so there's a lot of classical stuff. And there's something that's so regal's not the word, but like when there's guys in suits and ties and you're there in a suit and tie, and then it's good. It's just it's an experience. Like
absolutely.
I think there's a place for concerts that are casual with casual music, and you have fun, and like music is there for that.
Yeah.
But also, if that was all there was, I think we'd be missing out on the kind of music where you got to put effort into how you go.
Yeah,
and you have to put effort into the respect of like, yeah, these guys, like yourself, you spend all this education and training for a specific sound to sing with a group, like a big group or a choir. And and like you leave feeling, edified and just more in awe. It's just like, I feel like music has a place for conveying all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Absolutely.
And I record you all the time, so
you do.
I get. I also have the benefit of editing your vocals and everyone's vocals, and oh man,
and we appreciate you
it's
for
so
it.
funny.
Make you sound good.
There are some students. You get a range of people, and there was someone that had the courage to ask me. They're like, how much do you edit my vocals? And it was like a, I don't know, freshman, sophomore.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
Sure.
No offense to freshmen or sophomores, but they're like, how much are you gonna edit my vocal? And I'm like, do you really want to know? You really? Oh man. But I mean also, just to go from like, you were talking about in singing, why is this, when this wasn't just right, why was it? And I'm going to tweak the smallest tweak. And I feel like on my end of the coin, the more I've edited vocals, I feel like I've just constantly upgraded my psychological magnifying glass to like, how do I correct this person's pitch, but maintain the naturalness?
Yeah.
And like, it used to be, there's like this one note, this one waveform, and I would look at it as like, just snap it into place, right? Cool. And sometimes in a rush, I still do that. But when I have the time or the care, I see one note and I think, okay, So like when it hits, there needs to be room to slide up to it a little bit for it to sound natural. And then once you get here, okay, I'm going to smooth that out. And then once the vibrato starts, because, you know, a lot of people, it's not vibrato the whole way through. Like it's,
Right.
you want a natural, okay. And I'm watching the way the vibrato grows and I'm like, ooh, but like, I'm going to contain that just towards the end of the vibrato. And so like, I feel like towards the, you know, in that side of the process, there's just a skill in maintaining the integrity of what they were going for, because I think when you over edit, you know, you can kill that. And I was listening to an engineering podcast that this guy was saying like, yeah, I used to edit everything. And now I think like, how can I edit as little as possible while increasing the quality?
Absolutely.
Because there's life to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. Trying to keep the life in the sound, the just the natural, the tone that the person's producing. Yeah, I do think that's really important.
And, you know, on the flip side, so like, I showed you the podcast intro, and actually there's videos that are going to be coming out of how I made it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I'm doing is like recording how I'm making what I make. And, I go into the melodyne of like the background vocals, and because it's electronic, I just was like, you know what? No life, just like, because for me, I'm like, that sounds cool, you know, like, like maybe I did sing it one way, but I think in the electronic realm, it's like, you know, there's a context, you know, it's not a classical concert, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Such a crazy world.
It really is, but it's awesome.
Yeah. I feel like I should let you go.
Yeah, I need to get over to Panama City.
Man, but dude, thanks for making the time for this conversation.
10 out of 10.
It was good. I loved it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you guys for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.